You're watching World Insight with Tian Wei to nail down the impact of the results for this round of China-US Comprehensive Economic Dialogue and the overall relationship of the two countries. I'm joined here by Cheng Li. Dr. Li is the Director and Senior Fellow of John Thornton China Center with the Brookings Institution. Dr. Li, welcome to CGTN.
I'm very honored.
Let's talk about the just concluded China-US Comprehensive Economic Dialogue. What do you make of it?
I think that this is the second most important meeting after Mar-a-Lago, the summit. We basically want to implement what the top leaders agree. And economic field is one of the most important fields in bilateral relationship. China is the second largest economy. United States is the largest economy. And there are a lot of issues to discuss. Now, it's not just about the beef, chicken, agricultural products, but also about the natural gas. It's a huge market for China. It's a service sector, especially the financial sector in China. But at the same time, the openness should be mutual.
There has been imbalance, but some say the imbalance has a lot to do with the political limits from both sides to push forward for a real change in the trade structure.
The fundamental issue is whether China and the United States still complement each other in terms of on the economic front. My answer is yes. China's emphasis on service sector development, its emphasis on market reform, it's particularly on the consumption, domestic consumption, it's very much in line with American interests. At the same time, when U.S., especially Donald Trump's administration, want to emphasize infrastructure development, also open a huge market, particularly for China, because China's infrastructure development is way ahead of the world. And just one statistic: last year, the first 10 months, the Chinese put on the infrastructure development in China, it's equal and more than Donald Trump's 10-year plan.
Potential is one thing. How to do it and whether they're going to do it is another thing. So some people talk about Washington. Now we all know the politics and paralysis, a lot of things going on at the same time. How much will the Trump administration be able to focus?
A lot of people are still quite cynical, including the business community in the United States. Not only mentioning about the Congress and military or security apparatus, but even business community have a lot of concern. They think China's market is not open. But the problem is this cynicism, some of them more to do with American politics rather than their view about China. People are critical about Donald Trump's policies. So I think it's important for President Donald Trump to deliver with his that I'm a good businessman, I can get a good deal. So tell American public why engagement with China is beneficial for our business community and for our consumers. I think he has good reason to deliver because by and large, Chinese the trade really contribute to American economy. It's a win-win.
But for Donald Trump to deliver what? Because his earlier promises certainly are not going to be constructive for the overall development and the nature of the trade between the two countries. He talked about building China as a currency manipulator during the campaign. He also talked about exercising heavy duties on Chinese imports. Of course, when governing, he has changed so far. But the question is, for the long-term goals, yes, the two countries see eye to one another. And yet, for the nearer terms, there are different goals that the countries have. They cannot see eye to eye on some of the very specifics. And those are the ones that are preventing the things from happening toward a better potential.
Well, let me put that way.
Okay,
the summit between two top leaders, President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump, went extremely well. And I think both leaders not only established their friendship or chemistry, but also determined to really get some things done and to deliver to the American and the Chinese public that the relationship should be win-win. There's no other alternative. The problem is that a lot of bureaucracies and many people are quite cynical for various reasons. So therefore, this is a period to show that mutually beneficial economic relationship is still the norm rather than the exception. Because that we look at today's world, of course, Donald Trump's protectionism got a lot of criticism, so he now tried to adjust. The important thing is that we should see that his domestic economic policy, tax reform, and infrastructure development, bring manufacturing back to the United States, should be linked to his more conducive economic policy towards other countries. So China should be a good showcase for him. And I think that he should really, in the next few months, to reinforce. So the current mechanism, this comprehensive economic dialogue, is the mechanism try to reinforce that. Now, I'm not so cynical or critical about the achievements this meeting. This meeting, first, we should put in the context, in a very difficult environment. In China and the United States, both are in the middle of the economic structure change. Both have some domestic populism to think that we should not let others to take the benefits of our current situation. But the important thing is that we should understand, again, that in today's world, in the next level of development, China and the United States have a lot of areas to cooperate.
But you mentioned about a crucial word, Dr. Li, which is cynicism. You see that in politics these days, particularly in Washington, I would say. Will the machines, the government apparatus work to achieve the goals set by their own president, who they're a bit cynical about?
I think that the important thing is the story about China, about US-China relations, especially economic relations, is distorted in the American media, American discourse. There are too much criticism of China.
Are you adopting the tones of President Trump and saying this is a fake news or unfair reporting?
Of course, I mean, there's some fake news, but I think basically media does not present a balanced view of China. To a certain extent, that the Chinese media, it's relatively speaking, is better to present and cover United States. But I think the important things for people like media, for think tanks, we should explore the areas of cooperation. We should educate the public that why that mutually beneficial economic relations should be the goal we really inspire and search for, rather than just to be too cynical. I think cynicism, like dogmatism, could be an intellectual excuse, as borrowing my colleagues' very nice line. I think that it's important. We should look at the data, look at the statistics. Actually, statistics is not that bad. I mean, the list of the agricultural products, natural gas, financial sector openness. And I think at this point, it's very, very important. Now, China certainly wants to make sure that the financial stability is important, because China still stands certain kind of vulnerability. But this needs a good environment in terms of US-China economic and strategic and, most important, diplomatic relationship, without which China will be even more, in a more kind of vulnerable position. The same things, United States, despite Donald Trump's protectionism, but some of his cabinet members understand in today's world, you need to engage. Donald Trump also constantly adjusts his policy. And some of the things he said during the campaign, he now changed or revised.
You have a wonderful book called The Power of Ideas. And we do see in history the power of ideas. And yet there is also the reluctancy for people to walk out of their comfort zones. There is a huge distance between these two. Comfort zones, the real implementation of new ideas. Dr. Li.
The reason I write this book, there's some concern about the domestic situation in the United States and domestic situation in China. But more importantly, I feel that so many people in today's world still preoccupied with the Cold War kind of mentality or 19th century worldview. Sounds like the emerging power and the existing power could not find a kind of relationship other than conflictual. That's utterly wrong. This is, reminds me that what Einstein said, half century ago, or maybe even 7 decades ago, the world has changed, so much, except the mind, people's mind. Nuclear weapon changed everything, and except the mindset. And also the internet revolution, economic globalization, all change profoundly about the world we live. And without which that probably the world will be engaged with some major confrontation. And the Asia Pacific is a region, relatively speaking, compared with Middle East, compared with Europe, and actually in the past several decades maintain relative peace. I think that we should not let this kind of old ideas, outdated ideas, dominate our thinking. We should search for new ideas, the idea of partnership, the idea of cooperation, the idea of we now enter the 21st century world. So I think that's very, very important. Through communication, through dialogue, through your excellent program, we will find we actually more similar than we thought. This is actually the last line of the Zhang Yimou's movie, Great Wars. We talk about the people are so different, but in reality, that we are quite similar. That because of miscommunication, misperception, and also some wrong ideas, to prevent us to develop kind of trust, mutual respect. So let fear to dominate our thinking. So these are things that are particularly important for the two largest, power, the great powers in today's world.
But the thing is, how to make it happen? This, what you have just talked about, people are still clinging to the old concepts of Cold War, and they are still make use of it, take advantage of it when it comes to politics. But that has not been changed. It's only been intensified.
Again, that one thing is that it's still United States and China, despite all these tensions and concern, mutual criticism and fear, that the two countries still work together. And for that new mechanism of dialogue, along with the previous administration, that almost like a 105 mechanism early on, it indicates, despite all these problems, the top leaders all realize the importance of the bilateral relationship between the United States and China, arguably the most important bilateral relationship in our time. We should not let this relationship go to wrong direction. Donald Trump, when he came to power, is really quite worrisome. But even if Donald Trump will now actually put the relationship back on the right direction, right track, speaks loud about overall direction. So again, we should not be overly pessimistic or cynical. We should look at the big picture. We should search for good solution. Of course, that the interesting thing is that sometimes the solution becomes a problem. But we also should really to engage in all levels of exchanges, educational exchanges, that tourism and media communication, and all these play important role. Now we live in a world with instant communication.
That's right.
And so again, these are all, to a certain extent, this is also a new challenge, but actually I always see it's a new opportunity to help us to, at the end of the day, to see that what's the alternative.
Politics these days really are looking internally, anywhere in the world, and taking advantage of the preconceptions. And the other thing is China and the United States are the two largest economies in the world, are the most important countries in the world, but at the same time, there is the potential of a competitive relationship, the possibility at least for it. So how can you persuade some people in both countries be able to understand the potential that you are talking about, and rather to not to look at the so-called darker side of the possibilities?
I think that you do not need to be a political scientist or the top-notch scholar to understand. Politicians are more concerned about domestic, situation, and but because of this understanding, also help us to understand some of their rhetoric, some of their strong, criticism of other countries actually more to do with domestic audience rather than they really want to pursue that. So that understanding help us to put things into perspective and be cautious, not overreact. So we already witnessed all these kind of things. But also that nowadays, some politicians, no matter what, no matter which country, Europe, Africa, Asia, North America, any politician want to use foreign policy conflict for domestic issue.
Consumption.
I mean, that's a wrong game to play because people are not so stupid. They understand that this is even more dangerous. So I think that we should not be overly cynical to forecast some of the things do not happen. And of course, we should be cautious. And because our caution, because our discussion can prevent these kind of things happening, I think that's important.
There are two parameters we should look at. One is what's going to happen with the 19th Party Congress, what's the result of it, and how is that likely to have an impact on this most important bilateral relations. The other is the United States, whether Donald Trump is going to serve a full term, and what's going to happen with the midterm election coming up next year. So, Dr. Li, shine some lights for us about these two issues.
Let me put still from the economic perspective,
sure.
As we know that the third platinum of the 18th Party Congress lay out the wonderful blueprint for China's economic reform. This economic reform blueprint occurred at a time that the world experienced some financial uncertainty. You see the wave of protectionism in UK, in Europe, in United States. So you got to be careful, you got to be cautious. And President Xi Jinping has been busy with anti-corruption and military reform.
That's right.
And international politics, one belt, one road, and the so-called major power relation with the United States. So he resolved some of the problem. So it's a time for him to deliver the economic policies to really like China to be more competitive on the world stage. So some of the reform policies will be fully implemented. There's some institutional development like the Financial Stability Committee, like the Supervision Committee, or Commission will be established. So I think I'm optimistic about the 19th Party Congress and afterwards. For the United States, it's similar. Donald Trump, that despite all the criticism, but despite a very controversial election, he is determined to deliver. The more problem he faces, to make him to have more urgency to show both domestic policy and the international relations. So in the next few months or a year, he will certainly hope that the tax reform will be implemented.
Even though healthcare failed.
Well, but that's debatable, who will benefit. I mean, he may not necessarily want to completely abolish Obamacare and etc. But also the infrastructure development. Can you imagine United States as the biggest power in the world with such kind of lousy third world kind of infrastructure? No. I mean, you need to change. So that gave him kind of a mandate to pursue. But of course, that we still do not know some of the challenges he faces. But I will interpret these challenges actually become his incentive to deliver, to implement these policies. So in that regard, I'm also not that pessimistic.